Hello, everybody, and this is Eric at Glen Tobacconist. Thank you again for joining us on another live episode. I believe this is episode number 8, and this is a very, very special episode, and very special to me, very special to the shop, because we're going to be discussing, after about a year and a half of opening, we're going to be discussing the house blend release of Glen Tobacconist. Now, our particular house blend that we are releasing, it comes in 3 different blends. It is called Cedar Car Cigars. Those 3 blends are all from Nicaragua. One is Connecticut, one is Corojo, one is Maduro. Released in 2 different sizes, Torpedo and Robusto of each. But we're very, very excited, and we finally got some of them banded. So for that, we're going to be discussing our blends. We're going to be discussing the art and the blends together. We have the names right here. This one here you might have seen. I've kind of teased some of it on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook. This is the Ash Cat. This is our Connecticut. We have the Iron Horse, which is our Corojo, and then we have the Night Owl, which is our Maduro. So as I say, we're going to be talking about these blends, and we have a very special guest with us tonight, Mr. Curtis Bailey, graphic design artist who came up with the art, and we're going to be discussing how that was came about, sort of the evolution, that sort of thing. So tonight, I'm going to be smoking the Iron Horse, which is the Corojo, midway through. I would, let's see here, we have Risen Misfit says you should get some apparel and hats. Unfortunately, we were not able to do it in time for the release, but that is on the calendar. So for this Corojo cigar, a ton of flavor, strengths in the medium, medium plus. On the dry draw, I get a lot of earth and spice. And I'm going to be lighting this up. So if you have any questions, comments, feel free to drop them inside. I would love to hear your comments, also questions, and also what you are smoking. If you're lighting up a cigar this evening, go ahead and just let me know what that is, and also what you're pairing it with, what to drink. Now, as I say, in a short time, we're going to bring Curtis Bailey on. He is a regular, a local here at Glen Tobacconist, but also a man with many talents and enjoyment for cigars. And so it was a perfect fit to have him sort of design our bands for our blends. Have him joining. So something I love about the Iron Horse, I've smoked this on a number of occasions. Seems like it only gets better as it ages inside our humidor. You have that like signature Nicaraguan Corojo, like burst of spice and cedar wood, and then it backs off to a bit of creaminess, and it's brilliant altogether. So without further ado, I will have Curtis go ahead and join us, and if you can please help me welcome him adding to the group. How's it going, Curtis?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing good, doing good. How about you?
Not bad. I think you probably saw that I did the deed and got my stab earlier today. So
nice.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. If I spontaneously learn the language of the lizard people, I promise I'll teach you.
Awesome. Sorry, I'm just looking at some of the comments that we're getting through. Seems like we have a little bit of lag on the internet. So sorry, guys, if it seems a little choppy. Hopefully we'll kind of taper off. With all the cold weather that's happening here in Oakland, we've kind of been trying to get that together. Jason is on saying lighting up a Gran Habano, and a few others. Scott is on as well. So you are lighting up what cigar?
I'm going to do the Iron Horse. Joining
awesome. Awesome. And you have not smoked this before, have you?
No, I haven't had any of them yet.
Cool. So not to put you on the spot as you're cutting and lighting,
go for
but
it.
maybe just give a little bit of background, possibly first before coming into the project of Cedar Car Cigars, even perhaps a patron up here. What was some of maybe the cigar that got you on the journey of smoking cigars, and what was kind of that pull? What did that look like?
Well, I mean, if you want to be really technical, the thing that got me started was Black and Milds like 25 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was something that I opted into. It wasn't like, I was out somewhere with somebody and they were having it already and they're like, hey, do you want to try one or whatever? I was just curious about it myself. I already knew that I liked the way that like pipes smelled and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the realm that I was in for a while until I had my first, like proper premium cigar. And I don't remember specifically what that cigar was.
Okay.
Probably when I was in my early mid-20s, or early 20s. And my best guess is like a Macanudo Hyde Park or something like that. But
Okay. Yeah.
I don't remember. But I was in it from the get-go with the Black and Milds. So
if those were good, all your best cigars were ahead of you at that
question my taste as much as you feel is appropriate there. I haven't had one in a long time. I probably wouldn't care for it anymore. But.
Okay. So yeah, starting from there. And so was it like the typical transition, do you think, as far as starting off on cigars that were on the more mild side and then gradually building your strength up? Because it seems like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but your profile tends to be in the medium plus the full body.
Yes. And that's I'd say that still even then is kind of a relatively recent development for me, like in the last 4 or 5 years that I've like really wanted to go into heavier stuff. Prior to more commonly getting, again, like proper long filler premium cigars, I did do some infused ones for a while. I don't remember what the brand was anymore. It was just whatever the local shop that I went to had.
Okay. Yeah.
One and rum and stuff like that. And that's, that was my kind of wheelhouse for a couple of years. And then somewhere in that period is when I hit the Macanudo and I was like, okay, this is the thing. And then it went from there.
Awesome. So Risen Misfits says that he likes to smell because the ice cream truck man always smoked a cigar, and that was during his elementary years. Evolution. There you go. For me personally, I grew up in a household without cigar smoking, so it's an interesting evolution for sure.
Yeah, and likewise. I mean, there wasn't any smokers in my house, and my mom would certainly not be happy about this, but it is what it is. But there was a gentleman in my neighborhood where I grew up. He was retired, and he worked out of his garage doing sculpture and stuff like that. And as a kid who was already kind of like interested in art, I liked hanging out with him in the summer, right? I'd go swing by his garage just to see what he was doing. And he's always like, welding things together and whatnot. But he always had a pipe. And I don't know if that's where it started, but he was kind of like a neighborhood grandpa, right?
Yeah.
Really cool to me. Taught me how to do some things with sculpture, but he smelled like pipe tobacco all the time.
Yeah, there you go. So for those watching, I see Brian's on. Awesome. If you have any questions about Cedar Car cigars and the house blends that Glen Tobacconist is releasing, and especially the artwork, feel free to drop it inside the comments. Also drop what you're smoking and drinking. If you haven't gotten a chance to check out the art, and I'm sorry, our camera is probably not the best to actually try to visualize this. However, click on the link in this video, and that will direct you to the Cedar Car Cigars page. That gives you sort of a lowdown on the names, where they came from, the blends, and also sort of pricing, what's available. If you'd like to make an order, we'll get it shipped out to your door. That's all in the link in this video. Go ahead and click it, and it will send you there. So sort of to start things off, before we really delve into the blend, I noticed you had a Glencairn glass. So with the Iron Horse, what are you pairing it with?
I have Compass Box.
Very nice. Very nice. Awesome.
It's a nice pairing so far.
Great. And initial light up, some of the tasting notes that you're getting from the Iron Horse?
I don't know that I can add anything more to what you already said. I mean, there's definitely, a little bit of heat. It's woodsy. It's balanced. I don't get anything that's like, really, for lack of a better term, like a big peak or spike in the flavor profile so far. Right. It's good.
Awesome. Yes, Risen Misfits, we will have this at OGT. Jim says we'll try to make that the hour plus drive out there this weekend to pick some up. Awesome. If you guys get a chance, Saturdays when we do the official release, we're going to have a bunch of specials, a bunch of deals, and they finish the night. We're going to be showing the documentary Hand Roll documentary, so don't miss it. So in graphic design world, I know we kind of met a couple of times to talk about basically what the blends are and what the names are. And then it's your department is basically bringing that to life, making that description unfortunately, it was probably pretty vague on my part.
Yeah.
The description basically come to life. And as a side note, like following you on Instagram and stuff, like I've seen your black and white art. I've always had an affinity for the ability to bring art in just those tones, black and white. So let's start with maybe the lightest of the blends, which is our Connecticut blend called the Ash Cat.
Right.
Some of the description and stuff. What did you sort of visualize, and what was the process like?
Well, I'm gonna have to ask a counter question. Did you want to get into talking about like the conception for the brand? I can't remember how much you've already announced about that.
No,
The names were settled on, because that was a big part of also driving what they looked like from an art standpoint.
So basically, for those who don't know, our humidor and our smoking room is in a 1913 train car. And that's kind of where we get this sort of like Charleston dancing, like 1920s music at our shop. We kind of kept in that theme. And keeping the theme with the train car, we decided to make our blends indicative of that very thing. So the Ash Cat refers to a fireman on a train that would be placed. And basically, he would make certain that all is well in the fire department while the train is in transit. And so I thought it was very fitting for the Connecticut because it's full of flavor. It's got a punch to it, but it's also the most mild of the blends. And it is definitely one that's not going to like knock your socks off in strength. So we decided, hey, we had Ash Cat, and we really liked that name. And then we also wanted to follow suit in kind of keeping that slang term of the 20s. And we found there was multiple ones for animals as well. So we thought the cat kind of fit pretty well. That's how we came up with Ash Cat. Middle of the range, what we're smoking, the Iron Horse. Iron Horse refers to a rather powerful or slang term of a locomotive. To me, it's kind of what drives the entire brand, because it's that wheelhouse. It's approachable for those who like lighter cigars, but also it's complex and it's got enough flavor punch and strength for even full-bodied smokers. And it tends to be the one I keep going back to. And the Night Owl refers to a passenger train, a late passenger train during the night. And of course, dealing with a Maduro, a darker shade of tobacco, it was kind of just a perfect fit. So that's kind of how we decided. It took about a week or two until we decided to land on those names. And so as Curtis and I met, now we had we had to start the journey of creating those blends with those names and what do they look like on the labels. And so that's kind of how Ash Cat came about.
Right. So when I came in, the first thing that I thought about, and it was clear, since they were all animals, that was like going to be, an obvious way to go. And sometimes you don't want to do the obvious thing, but sometimes the obvious thing to do is the best thing to do. And so then the question was, okay, well, how do we still make it feel like, it kind of fits the sort of vibe at OGT, and a part of your personality and what you've kind of built for the place is that you have an affinity for early 20th century design and culture and everything.
Right.
So it seemed appropriate to kind of go that direction with it. So when I started out, it was just, okay, let's do some personifications of these animals in period clothing, basically. Right. Anthropomorphize them just a little bit. And that was the starting point, because, it blended together, those names that came from the train thing, because you have your boxcar where your cigars are. Your kind of, not personal style, but I guess personal style, but the style you've like adopted for Glen Tobacconist. And then unified across the fact that they're all animals, so we can have these little like mini personas.
Right. And so I just saw we got a comment from Tim Swanson. Most of our regulars here know who Tim Swanson is, Mr. Cigars Daily himself. And very quickly, not to jump off topic of that, but I actually have to give a shout out to Tim in regard to he's sort of the mentor in a lot of this journey, because he's got years and years of experience. And I've got about now almost a full 2 years under my belt. So with that, we kind of talked about doing house blends and such. So quick shout out to him. Tim, right now we're talking about our house blend called the Ash Cat, which Mr. Curtis Bailey himself has hand drawn, and we've created as our cigar brand as one of the one of three of the blends. And so I will say on a personal note, as you kind of alluded to on the enjoyment of that culture and that time period, the boater hat, 100% spot on. Like it was perfect. And then you got the bow tie as well. And I think too, I mean, Mallory, my wife, was also in on the process, and she actually came up with the suggestion of having it Ash Cat, having him basically deplete into smoke from either edge. So
yeah, well, and that was the nice part, you know, and you know, you've done this with me once now, so but this is completely, you know, a typical process is that, you know, after I gather like the first kind of notes and ideas about what you want it to look like, and I kind of explore a little bit, you know, you came back with really good, precise feedback about wanting to push the sort of like literal interpretation of the metaphors, if that a little bit further. Yeah. So the Ash Cat went from, you know, a cat in period garb to one that was embodying the smoke.
Yeah.
And the horse went from, you know, a horse with a flat cap on to a steampunk locomotive horse, right?
Right.
Which I think was fantastic, and you know, I love the way that, you know, they each have their own kind of like, you know, little like ephemeral stylistic thing to them now. So yeah.
And speaking of the Iron Horse, so here is what Curtis and I are smoking. There's the Iron Horse in its art. Something I really appreciate. I kind of alluded to this, Curtis, when you had come up with the prints when we met at the shop. If you can kind of see sort of the spikes on the end just barely come out of the edge of the oval. And each blend does that. And that is a minor detail, one I very much appreciate. It's the attention to detail where I really think these labels pop and really grab your eye.
Well, thank you. It's fun to, you know, play with the frame. In this case, the frame is an oval, but, you know, you don't have to, like, you know, respect that space. You can
right.
And it gives it just a little bit more life. So real quick, I want to say before I forget, shout out. I don't know if he's still on, but shout out to Tim. He's my Alma Forte supplier, and I'm very grateful.
Very good cigars. Very good cigars. And another aspect to all these labels is I remember mentioning I really enjoy what you do in your art to play with sort of that negative space, that black background. So when you're converting a rough sketch to something of that nature, what is the process? Are you using a black background with like white art, or are you like what does that look like?
Well, like the process I usually go through for anything like that is, you know, the sketch comes first. There are artists out there that can do stuff like this without doing a sketch. They're brilliant and amazing, but most of us are humans and we have to do sketches. So it kind of depends, but in the case of yours, what I did is that I took a photo of each of the sketches, then brought them into the computer and put them into Photoshop, so then I could kind of like build layers and start, you know, doing the ink of the outlines over top of the sketch, and then I could put that black oval back there, and you know, make sure the space where the character took up there was, you know, white to fill, you know, the head of the owl or whatever.
Right.
And then once I kind of look at it there, then I kind of know, like, you know, what's the relationship between this white and the oval, and what parts are going to bust out and stuff like that. So it's a little bit of trial and error, but yeah, that's does that answer the question?
Yeah. Sort of the journey behind it. And then, as you alluded to as well, that is the night owl. And the night owl, it's funny because I remember when we were discussing the art for it, like me and you were on the same wavelength as the monocle. The monocle had to happen. And it fits very well. And you have this sort of like gentleman persona of this owl. I know we have a local here named Steve, and we all joke that it is Steve in the top hat. But it works very, very well.
We'll have to get him a top hat. It's
exactly.
Mandatory now.
Next Halloween.
He might already have one.
So Rob actually is here with us as well, and he had a question of when you are drawing inspiration from different areas to create a piece of art, whether it's the cigar bands, whether it's your own, other than maybe like film and such like that, where are some of the inspiration points that you hit?
Oh gosh. Well, I have a little bit of an education background in fine art, so I certainly wouldn't be able to write any theses about about any of it, but I have passing familiarity, so that's just a good base to begin with.
Okay.
But I also I'm very much into a lot of cultural things like mythology and whatnot, and of course art goes along with that really strongly.
Okay.
I like comic books. I like you can see behind me here. There's my Drew Struzan illustrated movie posters. There's famous illustrators that I draw inspiration from, like as far as stylistic things go. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. There's a gentleman named Alan Lee who was one of the concept illustrators in all the Lord of the Rings films that came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, we had a book that was written by him and another illustrator named Brian Froud, who would have been the designer on The Dark Crystal, which some people watching might be familiar with.
Okay.
Again, super elaborate fantasy, very much driven by British Isles folklore and fairy tales. So all that kind of stuff, just as a kid, kind of went into my pores, and Okay. And then the other big one, if you've seen any of the slightly more cartoony things that I do on my Instagram, is Bill Watterson.
Okay.
Who created Calvin and Hobbes, which is typically the best comic strip ever made. And his style is just so loose but clean at the same time. Like he renders things so beautifully, but there's a real liveliness to it.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since I got my ink brushes and I started doing some of that stuff, kind of without even really thinking about it, the style that came out as I was doing it was Bill Watterson.
Subconsciously.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of different things,
Yeah.
It all started with stuff that I was into as a kid.
And we actually have a question of what is your Instagram handle?
I think it's curtisbailey.cb.
Okay, awesome. Now, as far as your involvement here at Glen Tobacconist, I mean, it really starts at the beginning. And I know we've kind of talked about this together, but for some watching, perhaps don't really know, my wife and I started really, really humble beginnings. We had a small budget, and we had an Indiegogo campaign, and we kind of just reached out. And you being a resident in the local area, not too far, I believe stumbled across the Indiegogo, or how exactly did you find it?
I was at the one of the vape shops down in Beaumont buying supplies for my wife, and they asked, did I need anything for myself? And I said, no, I smoke cigars. And the gentleman that was working there knew you. I think you might remember who it was. I don't remember his name, so I apologize.
Yeah, I think it was Mike Dewar, I believe.
So Mike Dewar, if that's you, if you're out there, if you're watching. But he's like, oh yeah, I know a guy who's starting a thing up in Oak Glen. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So pretty much immediately after finding out about that, I went home and looked you up and supported your campaign and got to be your first customer.
Yeah. And I mean, and when we opened, we chose the 30th of August, and at that time it was a Friday. Mm-hmm. So we said, okay, for anyone who donates X amount in this tier, we'll do a soft open for them. And you were one of two to start that off, and we, I believe, smoked the Buense from Foundation, phenomenal cigar.
Mm-hmm.
And
my first Foundation. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there you go. And trying a boutique blend and trying that together. And I remember too, seeing your contribution come through and such. Mallory was like, "Who is this guy, Curtis?" I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea, but it's great.
I inflicted myself on you.
That's right. But then come to find out, you're a graphic design artist, and it was I think one of the first like real tastes that we got here at the shop is the decal that you made for our humidor door.
That was fun.
I still get people saying, "Hey, why don't you have a T-shirt of that?" So hopefully that will be in the mix as well eventually.
That is a good T-shirt. I didn't even think of that.
It would be. And from there, kind of seeing your talent and what your Instagram was, it kind of really worked, really to represent our brand. So we couldn't be more happy with how it turned out.
I am too. You know, I was telling you this the other day. It's always rewarding to see your stuff, like, you know, in the wild. You know, when you've designed. Yeah. For my day job, like, you know, a big chunk of what I do just goes out into the world and they use it somewhere in, you know, Orange County or whatever, and I never see any of it. But on the rare occasions where you do get to see your own stuff, it's kind of like,
yeah.
Especially with something like this where it's personal to me. You know?
Definitely.
You know, it was a fun job to do. You know, I charged you money, but like, it was something that I was happy to do. So,
Right. Definitely.
Now, as happy as you are to have had me do it, I'm glad that you asked me.
Excellent.
I'm really appreciative because, you know, you didn't have to. You could have gone dozens of different ways with that. So,
well, it's your own fault for making good art. So, now I also asked you what you're pairing your cigar with because maybe unbeknownst to you, we had mentioned Steve, the Night Owl, and I don't know if you've heard the nickname that he and I have come up for you, but I asked you what you were drinking because we've nicknamed you the Whiskey Batman.
Oh yeah, I know, he's mentioned it.
And so along with the roles that you have played so far in our brand, as well as you play another significant role in our tasting nights, which is whiskey consultant. So what is
that sounds like a position that should have like a salary and a 401k and some
eventually we're still on the groundbreaking. It will get there. We'll get to that point. But what was that? What started the interest in whiskey?
I don't. That's a little difficult to answer, I think. I mean, you know, I had never like disliked it very much. Well, okay, no, credit probably goes to my fraternal twin brother, Peter, who is, he got into whiskey tasting years ago before me, and I had always kind of not necessarily avoided it, but I was for a long time in that kind of, you know, headspace of like, well, it all just tastes like alcohol.
Yeah.
And he and I, you know, until I moved to California in 2007, he and I had always lived either in the same apartment or in the same city. So shortly before I moved out here, you know, he introduced me to a couple things. And then we talked about it more afterwards, like, you know, when I would talk to him online and stuff like that. And I eventually just kind of started getting more curious. And the thing that really pushed me over the edge was, I guess about 3 years ago, I bought a bottle of Bunnahabhain 12.
Okay.
And that was the one that made it click for me. I was just like, this is what whiskey can be? And from there, it just skyrocketed, and I went on the internet. I started doing research, and I was like, you know, how is Scotch made, and what's the difference between this, and why do they call it single malt? And oh, look, here's the Whiskey Tribe, and I'll follow them, and I'll watch all their videos. And I appreciate being called Whiskey Batman, but really I'm only Whiskey Robin because Batman is the Whiskey Tribe and the Whiskey Vault. You know, those are that are the source of everything that I, you know, pretend to know.
Well, no, but your pairings have been spot on. And something that I notice in cigar culture, it seems like bourbon is more common, I would say, on the interest of whiskeys when it comes to pairing cigars and whiskeys. It's not completely common to hear single malt kind of in the mix. So I know this is really hard to narrow down. People don't really like to make these choices, but your like average wheelhouse, what region would you say that you enjoy more often than not, if there is one?
Oh, well, I mean, as far as if you're just talking about like, what I have the most often, it's going to be Speyside or Highland, that kind of zone, just because, they're kind of one size fits all, right? So you can, get a bottle of something like that. It doesn't have to be outrageously complex, and it kind of goes with everything, even if it's not like a magical pairing.
Right.
And also, I mean, I don't necessarily reserve peated stuff just for the winter, but I do like it in the winter. And
yes,
sometimes if it's 90 degrees outside and I'm sitting on my patio, having a Lafroig just is like a weird combination. So it's probably. I mean, my usual one is Monkey Shoulder, but just because it's
right.
Price to flavor, it's a really good compromise. But and as you know, I love my sherry cask finished ones.
Right.
But I go for Scotch primarily, I think, because I like the base flavors imparted by malted barley more than I like the base flavors imparted by corn, which is what you get from bourbon.
Right.
But through doing the tastings, some of those cigars, I was like, there's not really a particular Scotch or other thing I can think of that's going to go with this. But bourbon probably makes sense.
Right.
We've had some really good ones.
Yeah.
The Owl is fantastic, and the Rowan's Creek that we just had. Really good. So, that's been fun to kind of like get more familiar with that category.
Right. So we have a question from Jason asking, actually, as we're our first third into this cigar, how is it so far? I don't want to. I'll let you touch on some of the flavor notes you're getting. For me, although I will talk about the Corojo tobacco, what I enjoy about Corojo tobacco, being a Cuban seed, it's very rich. I've had Corojo from Honduras. I've had it from Nicaragua. I tend to, and this is just where my palate lies, I tend to lean towards Nicaragua because it has that earthy sweetness, but it also tends to be very cedar noted, which is something I look for and enjoy. And when you light up something that's predominantly Corojo, you have that like pepper up front, which I also enjoy, spice and pepper. But it's rare if that pepper is the one note through your cigar. That like light up, and it comes with this caramelized creaminess that just, for me, hits a perfect spot. But your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the kind of woodsiness of this is making me think that's that other the Kilkerran that I like so much with the Cedrus would probably be fantastic with this, because that's kind of salty and citrusy, and with the woodiness of this, I think that'd be really good. Just don't have any right now, but and the other thing I like about this, and I think it's another thing that would be common with the leaf that you're talking about, is that I always get like a lingering, I don't know if pepper is the right word, but there's a little heat of something that kind of sticks around, and it's not unpleasant at all. But yeah, that's it. I think the strongest note for this on me is the kind of woodiness, but not like like licking a plank or one of those awful sticks from ice cream where you're just like
right.
It tastes the way that good wood smells, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I remember when we were in the construction phase of our humidor, I think it probably went a little bit overkill. I mean, when I was doing research and I was like, I knew like, okay, Spanish cedar is what I want inside my humidor. And a lot of people were alluding, hey, you probably want like a 1/4 inch, maybe 1/2 inch. I decided to go a full inch. And so we all got all of our planks shipped in from Mississippi, all rough cut. So I had to like straighten out all the planks, and all I could taste for about 5-6 days straight is just cedar in the back of my throat. I mean, I'm wearing a mask, I'm wearing a respirator. Yeah. Didn't help. Like, it helped a little bit. It probably would have been a lot worse, but it was just straight cedar. So I think that's sometimes when I'm like, oh, I pick up this note, it's maybe because I've spent some time in close proximity with it, that it reminds me so much of that. But then that sweetness, I think, is what helps balance it out. And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say, and I just did a retro hail, and I think I catch even more of the sweetness there.
Yeah, yeah,
For me. So
right. Well, and two is Nicaraguan tobacco, which I tend to lean towards, tends to have more of that richness. And I would say if it's something more smooth that you want, if you're more of a Dominican tobacco cigar smoker, the Ash Cat's kind of going to be up that alley because it has those like smooth, fleshed out notes, but that creaminess to it. But to the Iron Horse, it's definitely more of a like Nicaraguan spirited cigar, which I really, really enjoy.
Actually, does not taste like horse.
Right. True.
Not that I have any idea what that tastes like.
So, and with the two sizes that we chose, we have a 5x50 Robusto and a 6x52 Torpedo. Is there? I've actually had this question posed to me before. Is there a pet size that you enjoy? Is there a sweet spot size?
Yeah, and I know that there can even be overlap if you're going by name. So, like generally speaking, I like something that's, around the mid 50s ring gauge and 5.5 plus.
Right.
I like a Churchill. Double Corona. I mean, I like my cigars to last for a little bit.
Yeah.
So if it's a little tiny one, that usually means I'm going to have another one later.
Right. Yeah. So, and you alluded to it previously about the Cedrus being the Oakland Cherry Valley Batman Robin / whiskey. You've come up with a few magical pairings. And that Cedrus one that you alluded to, what exactly was that?
It was a single malt from Campbelltown, which is kind of a sub-region or new region. How the regions are defined is a little funky, and I can't swear to whether or not they have like an official designation, because I think in some cases they do have official designations. But Campbelltown, one of the things that sort of defines it is there's like a little bit of funk.
Okay.
It's hard to describe, and usually pretty oily. It's like like a grease monkey whiskey, which I know sounds awful, but like that's the best way that I can describe it.
Okay.
And this particular one, the Kilkerran 12, because of that oiliness, it coats well, right, and you get more complex flavor evolution, and it's a little briny and has like lemony notes, and just those flavors combined with the woodiness of like the Cedrus, or probably I'm guessing this, is insanely good for me.
Yeah. That helps us click. And I think too, it's funny because like, I mean, as we mentioned, whiskeys, you tend to lean towards profiles that you really, really enjoy. And I think that was kind of what we did with our blends. Now, we haven't talked too much about the Night Owl. The thing I enjoy about the Night Owl, which is our San Andreas Maduro, personally for me, San Andreas is a very interesting tobacco. It is started off during the mid-early 90s during the cigar boom as the cheap Maduro. And then because basically how readily available it is, it's not as perhaps expensive or as hard to get to as like Connecticut Broadleaf. But then you start having a lot of interesting blends in the later like teens of the 2000s coming out. I mean, we have like the Paul Stulak Limitada that we started carrying. Insanely good. And there's a lot of complexities with San Andreas. The thing I enjoy about the Night Owl tobacco that's used in it is it's, I would say, medium to medium plus, nothing too strong. But it's kind of like what I've experienced with some of Perdomo's Maduros, in the sense that it's approachable, but it's also enjoyable for those who want that heavy hitting cigar. And I think that really like flavor can go even further than that strength. I mean, depending on what I feel like sometimes people try to sacrifice flavor for strength. And something that I've found in all three of these blends, it's a good balance between the two.
Nice. I'm looking forward to trying the other two.
So, if you had to name several of like maybe your sweet spot brands, because I've asked several people this as well,
Sure.
what's 3 brands that you really enjoy on a normal basis in the cigar world?
I'd say that like all my current favorites are ones that I can credit to your humidor. There's plenty of other stuff that I smoked in the past, but I've found a very big love for AJ.
Okay. Yeah.
If I had to pick my number one, that's probably my number one, which would hurt a little bit because that means I'm losing out some other ones that are really good. But, I think what I like about AJ is the complexity in all of their blends, and then also the complexity in their lineup.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But on top of that, Foundation, where it started between me and you with the Wallense.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I don't know. I mean, my father is fantastic, but now Aganorsa's come in as like a really strong player with both that torch and the Lunatic torch that I think are excellent. The Night Watch is good. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe somewhere in there for like my number 3.
Right. I know it's putting it on the spot for sure.
No.
And it's definitely a harder question, but it's one of those things too that I think as your palate develops, it can be ever changing. But there's something to be said about those brands that it's like, yeah, I've tried X amount more afterwards, but I still come back to these brands. And it's really where that personal blending touch really comes into it. So yeah, it's a very interesting thing to see how that palate transitions. I mean, as you started on possibly Macanudo, now you're on to fuller body stuff. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's a very interesting thing to go through.
Yeah. Now, if you were to ask me like my number one favorite cigar, and I apologize if I'm like jumping the line on your questions, but
no, not at all.
That's a weirder one because it's partly a sentimental choice, but it's also one that I still think is a very good cigar and one that I like revisiting occasionally. And it's not from any of those 3 companies that I just named.
Right.
It's with the Padron Anniversary 64.
Not a bad cigar to choose.
So, I've had other ones that I think are maybe more complicated or interesting than that one. But it was one of the first ones that I had. It was like when I had that Bunnahabhain, I was like, oh, this is like on a different level now. Or I said, in a way that I didn't before. And for me, that cigar is the Padron 64. So
now, how much of a role would you play? It's a decent role. Because I was at another cigar lounge earlier this week, and this question came up, and I was curious to hear the different answers. How much of a role do you think the environment, the memory, the company plays in your smoking experience?
I'd say it's the primary thing for me. Because if I'm with good company, if it's a large group like what we get at the shop every weekend, or if I'm just sitting down with my brother or a close friend to do it. The cigar is maybe not even necessarily the catalyst, but it's sort of like the glue for the evening. It's kind of but it's not. There's never a night that I had a great time smoking a cigar with someone where I'm like, but the cigar was terrible, because I don't remember that. It just doesn't. So maybe that means that good company makes the cigars better or whatever. I don't know how to quantify that, but but I like that the idea behind this is that you sit down with a person or people that you're close to, and you just spend time together. You don't have to have your phone out. You're not engaged in something else, and it forces you to slow down. And it's not that I live like a manic, crazy life to begin with.
But we're in California.
Sure. But so yeah, for me, the cigar is not quite incidental in those circumstances, but my best memories are always like, I mean, I had a cigar in Vegas at the Mandalay Bay after I got married. Don't remember what it was, but I was able to sit there with my new bride and the people that we invited, and just and so yeah, that was the cool part of the cigar. Is just like an additive to the whole
Yes, yeah. Well, and I think too, I mean, as we're talking about these blends that we are willing to put Glen Tobacconist's name to, and then you are willing to put your hand to in the art. It's just kind of, to me, mentally, it makes sense. It's layer upon layer upon layer of what this really brings to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I mean, I've kind of said this before to several of our locals. If the cigar community, if a cigar shop is just about retail and moving product, it would get boring very quickly.
Sure, yeah.
For me, it's the gatherings we have. It's the tastings we have. It's St. Patty's Day last night and sitting around and tasting the same cigars. And what are you getting? Even certain of our customers, we've got some people who don't enjoy it. I
know Rob is sitting there.
We've had some cigars that taste like a paper bag. So, I mean, it's all the experience, but that's what makes it so special. And that's what makes it so great. And that's what makes it.
I'd rather have a good night with having a good time with good people smoking a crap cigar than the other way around.
Right. And then when it's elevated by a blend or a brand that you really enjoy, it's just that much better.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And on Saturday, as we do our release party for all these brands, that's kind of why I wanted to end with the documentary Hand Rolled. It's that appreciation of, this is a handmade product. It goes through typically on average 300 hands from seed to cigar. And you learn that appreciation for what's behind it. And it's as important as artwork that's inside the band. It's as important as the blend, as the passion behind it. And it's almost, it's like other industries, but it's also at the same time unlike many other industries. And yeah, it brings special conversation together, and it's just an enjoyable thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's we've talked about this before, but that's one of the things that makes things like this and things like this so engaging, is that they are organic, kind of handmade products. There's a big human element involved. There's always people tasting things along the way, and
right,
taking care to sort of turn it into the expression that they want. And it's sort of the people who are making it representing their personality in these kind of fragile organic products. And that's not like like this, as important this is, and as much as I like having it, this is an industrial product. It's not the same.
Right.
So.
Well, and even so, I mean, like when we were going through the blends of, okay, what is Glen Tobacconist going to offer as a house blend? And a lot of people in the industry would come back and tell me like, hey, you guys need to have a house blend. Maybe we were overly picky. Maybe we weren't. Unfortunately, I found too many of the stuff that we went through not really something I wanted to assign my name to.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing, I mean, we have Josh watching as well, and he basically agreed with your list. He's like, my list is basically the same. When you're dealing with these these big names in the industry and the quality they bring, and then you're a small mom and pop shop in Oak Glen, that you're like, hey, we're possibly not bringing as much. We still want a product that is on par with that, and it makes me very happy to say it only took a year and a half. But we finally got there, and we're really excited for Saturday and its release.
Well, if the other two, are a representation of your taste as much as this is, because I really enjoy this, then I can't wait to try them.
And I think too, I mean, people who've come into the shop, maybe they'll agree, maybe they'll disagree, but I tend to have somewhat of a higher bar standard for what I want inside my humidor and what is inside the Glen Tobacconist humidor. There's certain brands I enjoy, certain brands I don't enjoy. But with that, I was happily pleased that every time I come back to, let's say, the Iron Horse or the Ash Cat, which I'm not a Connecticut smoker, it seems like it's a stairway. To me, it just gets better and better. If I were to unban this cigar, unban another cigar in its similar category, and tell me, hey, which one do you enjoy more? It would be a tough call. It's an excellent cigar. It smokes well, and the burn is razor sharp, which is really enjoyable. So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Curtis, for joining us on our live, and thank you again from the bottom of my heart for the art that you bring and the talent in your artwork. It speaks for itself, really. All people have to see is the pictures that I've teased enough to gain that interest.
Well, again, thank you for asking me. I mean, this projects like this aren't the kind of, come along every day when you do what I do. And this is true even for like super big famous designers or design houses. I guarantee you can go to their portfolios and they'll have all their best, most amazing, most groundbreaking work, on their website. But I guarantee you they've done like 5 times as many jobs where they're just like, yeah, we just did it because, we got paid to. And so working on something like this was really special for me. It's really special to be with you tonight, tasting it for the first time, the cigar that you sort of imagined and sought out. And then, I kind of helped you imagine the brand together. And then I got to create the artwork for it. And then seeing it when you gave me the bands and the stickers the other day, I was like, this is the coolest thing. So thank you.
So, and a question I've saved for the last is because typically when I'm talking with a manufacturer, talking with a rep, I pose the question I already did previously. It's like, hey, what gives you inspiration? What cigars do you like to smoke outside of your own brand? What are some of those brands? In designing a label, what are 3 brands that you really enjoy as far as their label presentation? Because we made it previously. We made a video, as you probably watched. What do labels play a part in picking that cigar off the shelf if you know nothing about it?
Right.
So, as a graphic design artist, what are some of the 3 companies possibly that speak to you?
First is Plasencia, I think, for me, because I think they're very simple but elegant at the same time, especially on that Alma Forte. It's a thing of beauty just by itself. The colors are really tastefully put together and stuff like that. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
I'm liking Aganorsa overall. There's a couple that I think are more standout than others. The Supreme Leaf one was really cool just because how, kind of unique that was. And then there's one I was just thinking of, and I've already forgotten it because I'm old.
I know it's kind of also putting you on your spot.
No, it's okay. I mean, well, and there's a weird sort of, and this happens in whiskey too, where there's a real center lane, right, where a lot of the brands will be playing with the same sort of handful of visual ideas. In whiskey, a lot of time it's that sort of late 19th, early 20th century, sort of typesetting and that kind of thing. With cigars, there tends to be it's more ornate. You get a lot of filigree and gold, embossed bits and stuff like that. So there's sort of those narrow, and I think a lot of those bands can be really beautiful. I tend to like the ones that find something artful to do outside of that realm. Which is one of the reasons that I like the Plasencia so much. They still feel a little traditional. But they strip away a lot of the kind of the kind of ostentation, all the busyness that can happen with cigarettes a lot. So
yeah.
Um,
Did you find, in the designing, did you find the usage of sorry, excuse me, usage of black and white confining or creative?
I don't think that it's ever confining or not confining to have stuff like that. I mean, to a degree, us artists like limitations, because then that makes some of the choices clearer. But I don't have a resolute stance on like whether I think one is better than the other. It's just, is it appropriate for what you're doing?
Right.
Oh, I remember the other one. This might not be like a label that I think is the most beautiful, but I love the concept of it, and I think it's really kind of clever and interesting. And that was the Psycho line.
Okay.
The prescription cards.
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. It borderlines on silly, but like that's okay.
Yeah.
Cigars have to be like serious business, right? And
right.
So it gives that line personality.
Yeah.
So I like those a lot.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Curtis. And for those watching, if you would like to check out our brands, we have the 3 blends: Ash Cat, Iron Horse, and Night Owl. We have Connecticut, Corojo, and Maduro, available all on our website. If you click in the link on this video, that will take you directly to our website. As well as we are doing the official party on this Saturday, 3 o'clock to 9 o'clock. We'll be doing a bunch of specials, have an ash contest, and even finish it off with the hand-rolled documentary on the projector screen. If you can make it out, I highly recommend you do so. But thanks again for being a part of the community up here at Oak Glen, and we will see you soon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, take it easy.